Lovely. Good morning, ladies and non-ladies. I'm here today to talk about where can human go next in the context of space exploration and what are the limits of that. You know, Artemis 2 came back around 2 months ago. 4 humans flew around the moon, the furthest any person has ever been from Earth. And a significant portion of the public actually asked, why? Why did we do that in the first place? But it wasn't with curiosity, but with a lot of skepticism. In Poland, we felt that very sharply last year. So today, I want us to answer that question. And this is not going to be a press release, but this is actually going to be an answer of actual science and work being done. So let's meet our lovely ladies on stage today. I would like each speaker to say a few sentences about who they are and what problem in the industry you're trying to solve.
Hi, my name is Aleksandra Rutczyńska. I work for German Aerospace Agency, and we're trying to solve one of the biggest problems the human spaceflight faces, so the cosmic radiation, and how to shield ourselves against it.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Agata Harasymczuk. I'm representing Faculty of Space Technologies, AGH, and AATC company. We are trying to solve one problem, to bring space for everyone, to travel with families to space, to make this not hermetic, the human spaceflight for all.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Agata Mintus, and I represent Lunaris Research Station. We are working there on simulating crewed space missions with a focus on human factors and how to sustain performance and well-being in long-term missions in space.
Hello, everyone. My name is Izabela Świca. I am a member of Polish Astrobiological Society. In my research, I focus on bioregenerative life support system, especially in using of microalgae and cyanobacteria. So I'm working of producing some food, reuse waste in a space.
Amazing. So I just want to add that I do not come to this panel as a passive perspective either. So I am actively trying to pursue space biotechnology, and I would love to explore what sort of other fields and other perspectives can we bring to human spaceflight. Okay, so let's dive right into it. Aleksandra, your team built instruments that measured radiation exposure on Artemis 1 and 2, the first crewed deep main missions, one of them in 50 years. So what were you actually measuring, and why does it matter so much?
We have to start with answering the question what the cosmic radiation is. On Earth, we are pretty well protected against it. It still reaches the surface, but because of the magnetosphere and atmosphere, only the small proportion of it reaches the Earth's surface. But if we travel beyond the low Earth orbit, this protection is gone. And on long duration mission, astronauts have really the risk of cancer increases, health problems like brain damage, heart damage, central nervous system damage, cataracts. The problems are real. And the cosmic radiation comes in 2 flavors. One is the omnipresent galactic cosmic rays, so the very penetrating, high energetic particles that reach us from distant galaxies. This is very difficult to shield against. And the other component are the energetic solar flares, so-called solar particle events. So these are eruptions on the sun that are directional, but if they are directed towards Earth, we observe it as auroras, while the astronauts have to hide in radiation shelters. So the risk is really real. That's why we have to find ways to protect ourselves against the radiation. There is the rule we use in radiation protection. It's called as low as reasonably achievable, so the ALARA rule. And the problem we face, the technical challenge, is when you think about the spaceflight, we always want to reduce mass. But to protect the astronauts, we need the mass to shield against the radiation. So my team designs and develops radiation detectors that we put in various spots in the spacecrafts, and we check which parts of the spacecraft are the safest for the crew. That was the question we wanted to answer in the Artemis 1 and the Artemis 2 mission. In the Artemis 2, we had 4 detectors that were placed in different parts of the spaceship. Artemis 1 was slightly different. That was when we sent 2 female phantoms, and one of them was wearing a special radiation protective vest, and we wanted to check how effective the vest was.
Awesome. And at the same time, you actually also run bed rest studies back on Earth. So for people who've never heard of this before, what does it actually mean? And what does lying in bed technically for weeks tell us about going to space?
Yeah, so I started with radiation. This is one of the biggest problems in the human spaceflight, and that's my domain of expertise. But we also have the problem with microgravity. And the bed rest studies that are conducted in my institute, it's just a way to simulate the microgravity. So this constant free fall when all the liquids in the human body are transported towards the head and cause intracranial pressure and cause damage to the eyeballs and have really health impact on the astronauts. But since, as you know, not that many people traveled to the space, it was like 700 people, we have to find ways how to simulate it on Earth. And the bed rest study as an experiment where the participants spent 60 days in bed that is tilted, with the head tilted with 6 degrees towards Earth, which means all the fluids really move towards the head, same as in the microgravity state. And we observe the participants, we call them terrestrial astronauts, so it's all about finding ways how to counteract the effects the space travelers are facing.
Great work. You see, the data that Aleksandra's instrument or software generates, it isn't just a safety record. It's actually the starting point for an entirely different approach to research. So we can think about how we can engineer solutions, and not only technical, as per engineering sense, to radiation exposure, compounds that could regenerate tissues, or regeneration mechanisms. Awesome. So we have data, right? We know with increasing precision what human body is put up against in space. But knowing the threat is not quite the same thing as fighting it, and knowing as a person how it actually holds up against time when you're facing it. That's a different kind of research entirely, and it requires a different kind of environment to study. And that's exactly what Agata's work is built around. So you have been running analog missions at your own center at AATC, and most recently led the only Polish experiment in European Space Agency Solis 100 mission at DLR in Cologne, which, by the way, is also where Aleksandra's team is based. So what actually happens to the human body, human brain, when you cut it off from light, time, and just the literal outside world?
Thank you for this question. I think that everybody knows a bit about what can happen when you are kind of isolated, completely in darkness, sensory deprived. Imagine what will happen with your brain, what will happen with your body, how you will behave. This is very important. And that's what we are testing. Our all research are concerning the most important, part of the human spaceflight, the human brain. Everything what is problematic, risky with human spaceflight is the human itself. So we need to specially train astronauts in order to sustain extreme environment. But it is very expensive to test it, you know, on the orbit. And especially now that ISS is ending its life. We are now building 12 new orbital stations, including commercial ones. But still, this is too dangerous to test it there. We need to test it in analog environments. We have several analog habitats. In Poland, we have two. Agata and me, another Agata, we have two simulators to simulate analog missions, to prepare people, to make research. What are adaptations? What are fast adaptations that can later permanently damage your brain? And what is this? First of all, sleep deprivation is making your brain crazy. You are getting more and more depressed, more and more dangerous for your spaceship, for your crew, for everybody, for yourself. So, in order to do this, we try to see what happens during 1 week analog mission with deprivation. We are depriving our analog astronauts from light. We put them in complete darkness. Only lights of their mobile phones, only lights of their laptops are the only one stimulation for visual system. And you know, after 3 days, they are really asking us, MCC, please put the light on. We are getting crazy. So how to obey these kind of problems when on the spaceship you will have some problem with energy supply? Another problem, the longer duration analog missions. We cannot afford. 1 week is already too long time for many of analog astronauts. But European Space Agency is a sponsor of an amazing project in DLR, where we put 6 analog astronauts in 100-day simulation of light deprivation, of space deprivation and sensory deprivation. And what we are testing there, what is happening with their brain? So, time perception is changing.
Yeah, exactly. And you've studied time perception quite extensively, right?
Yeah.
So that is the idea that in isolation, the sense of time sort of distorts or diffuses, as you like. So what does that really mean in practice for the mission, for the crew? And why does it matter for a mission that lasts months or years anyway?
This is what we are going to develop technologies that will allow humans to be sensory stimulated over time, to make these kind of techniques that people will still feel needed in this kind of isolated environment. So we are creating bioreactors that are interactive with humans, that humans need to take care of these bioreactors. They are a part of this system. And then they feel needed, like that we are all a part of a universe, a part of this great society. So this feeling keeps you more healthy, keeps you needed, and your brain starts to be motivated and to be healthy, the whole body.
Yeah, and actually you're also training the next generations of analog astronauts as part of your Space Ready course at AGH University. So what does teaching people to prepare them for space tell you about the conditions themselves?
Well, we want to make people familiarized with human spaceflight. Until now, it was very hermetic, very prestigious. Only one person from one country could fly to space. Now times are changing. And because of that, we are inviting everybody of you to participate in e-learning course, How to be an analog astronaut. This is for free, Erasmus Plus project. And there you will find how many things you can develop, your interests, how many things you can do first in analog condition, and then, maybe I can repeat this on the space station. Maybe I will write a grant. Maybe I will get this money to fly to commercial space station and run my own project on the orbit. That's what we are really planning to do in the future.
Amazing. And you know what? What strikes me about everything that Agata has just said, that none of it is really as abstract as you could think. We think of space as a bit abstract, don't we? the way time feels, the way body regulates itself, it has a way of sort of be shaped by physical environment we're in and the people that we're living with. Which means the person that designs that environment is under a lot of pressure and responsibility. Agata Mintus, that's actually you. So you've designed habitats for Mars, analogs, literally using the planet's own surface as a building material. That sort of was the plan. But space architecture is more about than constructing itself. So could you tell us, what does it mean to design for human well-being in a place that everything is working against you?
First of all, there are safety matters that also Aleksandra was touching on. And those are the major hazard elements. But there are also a lot of aspects that are affecting, in case of long-term missions, in case of missions farther from Earth, there are things that are affecting our well-being, our performance, our psychological health, mental health. The thing is that the farther we are from Earth, the more autonomous the crew needs to be, the easier things for them need to be to operate the station. Inside Lunaris, there is a nice example of studies that we are also doing with people with different disabilities. And the case scenario for those kind of missions is that what if there is an accident in space? We had a very good example of medical emergency. I think it was in January this year. The crew had to be evacuated from ISS. The farther we are from Earth, the more difficult it is. So the studies that we are doing are answering the question, how to prepare, how to design the space, how to design the equipment, the procedures, to make sure that in case anything happens, people can quickly adapt to the new case. And it doesn't need to be any kind of major accident. It can be also something very temporary, like eyelash in the eye during the EVA extravehicular spacewalks when you have the helmet on and you cannot remove it. There are a lot of things from those missions that we left in the habitat as part of the station now. We had people that were, we had one participant that was blind, so there was a lot of features in the habitat that were helping him orient himself inside the station and still operate.
Yeah, and actually they say there's like a documented psychological dip that happens roughly 3/4 in through isolated missions. Is that a design problem as well? So can space architecture actually help with it?
Definitely. Agata also mentioned the sensory deprivation and things like that. They really affect our performance, our focus, our cognitive skills, and the design, the materials that we are using in the station, the amount of nature that we have in the station, anything that can stimulate us in the way, and we don't need to see the same environment all the time. Of course, first of all, there is a safety and the functionality, but the longer the missions, again, the farther from Earth, the more important is the well-being. And and I think architecture, the infrastructure, also the indoor climate has a great impact on...
Yeah, I was about to ask. So the features that you're talking about are mostly functional, but does appearance actually matter?
I think yes. There are great examples of experiments that were done also on ISS, trying to see, for example, the impact of nature on participants. We had few experiments as well where the type of nature, the amount of nature was tested during the 2-week isolation missions, and the response from crew side also in the case of taking care of something and seeing it develop during the mission, that had a great impact.
Yeah, awesome. So we can measure what the body faces, right? We can study how the mind responds. And now we can also design the environment to support both of them. But there's a more fundamental question underneath all of this, one that becomes the limiting factor of where can human go next and how far. You can have the perfect habitat, you can have the perfect mental preparation of the crew and individuals, the most sophisticated radiation shielding, but none of it matters if you can't satisfy the survival natural needs of humans, if you can't feed them, let's say. Isabella, that's actually where your work is in. So when people think about space food, we think about those freeze-dried, lyophilized, very sort of processed packets of food. What are you actually working towards in this space? So what are your improvements to this?
Yeah, today if we're thinking about going to moon, of course we have to bring some food there, but if we think about one step further, we also have to growing some foods in situ, like on the moon or Mars. The food which we can bring from Earth, it will be, as Veronika mentioned, freeze-dried. Okay, it provides enough calories, it's tasty, but some astronauts on International Space Station also mentioned that it is food without any texture. And you also mentioned about mental health and well-being astronaut. So it is important to provide the food in a also, okay, require, like we can provide enough calories, and also the texture is very important. So we have to think about growing some plants, preparing some food on the moon or Mars. We can use to this hydroponic system. It is very popular. We have some box like veggie system on ISS, so astronauts can grow some plants in space. But if we thinking about staying on the moon for the long time, we have also thinking about use the regolith, the surface of another planet. It is a big challenge because the regolith contains a lot of heavy metals. The particles like grains are very sharp, so it hurts the plants. So we have to do a lot of experiments before we can say that, okay, we can do some greenhouse on Moon or Mars.
Yeah, and you mentioned you work with lunar and Martian regolith simulants, right? What does it mean to really try to grow food in a material that doesn't seem really edible?
Yeah, first we have to adapt this substrate to growing plants. So it means that we have to remove some particles, some ions like aluminium or iron, and then we have to put nutrients there. Of course, we can't bring fertilizer from Earth, so we have to thinking about how to produce nutrients which can be used to fertilize our regolith, that we can prepare soil for growing plants. And we can use, of course, our waste. On the moon or Mars, we have to do everything in a closed loop. It is good idea, good solution. The crew is a part of this system, so we can use their feces, urine to produce fertilizer. But as I mentioned, it is closed loop, so it is a little risky. Because we have some bacterial infection, due to radiation, we can also observe some bacterial mutation. We don't know what we can happen if we go to the Mars. There is a long journey to Mars, and of course we are still working on some protection, material protection, habitat. So yeah, it is a big challenge to do.
Yeah, despite all the challenges, we can really see that this is a really cool field to be into. And I want to pause here actually for a second, because I think that what Izabela just described here is the clearest illustration of why this panel exists at all. Because the radiation data from Aleksandra, let's say, tell us what organisms can survive out there. The habitat design from Agata determines where a bioreactor can live and function. And the analog missions can actually test whether the crew is psychologically and functionally ready to operate all of these systems. And the software monitors all of it. I hope you can see the link here. None of these fields that our ladies work in can solve problems of space industry on their own. And that's the most important takeaway here. We need that interdisciplinary collaboration and things done simultaneously to actually advance the industry, the trip to Mars, let's say, because vaguely, but also vastly, the human biology is the biggest challenge, or why we haven't reached Mars yet as humanity. But there's a lot of approaches from all over science, technology, engineering, and modeling that we can contribute to accelerate that development. So we've spent the last half an hour or so building a picture of what actually it takes to keep a human being alive, surviving, maybe thriving, and functional beyond Earth. So now I want to come back to the actual panel question, which is, when can humans go next? But why should we still send humans into space? Is it worth it still? And what can we lose if we stop? I want to open this to all panelists here.
I can start with a vague contra question. What do we lose if we stop doing that? Looking back in the history of humanity, we can see that the discoveries never come out of thin air. They are always based on something that was done before. And if we stop, if our generation stops exploring, we don't know what the future might bring to the next generations. And to make sure that the resilience of humanity just our development doesn't stop here. So it's a bit vague, but yeah, maybe it starts a discussion.
Yeah, there are a couple of layers to it, because it's, first of all, I would maybe refer to what you said. In space systems, we have something called redundancy. And I think we should become redundant, in a sense, be interplanetary species and have another place where we are, just for the safety. And also the technology transfer that happens. Many systems we develop for space then are used on Earth and make life better on Earth. And there is also this neat example of Artemis 2. We have a lot of probes taking pictures of the lunar surface, but still the observations the astronauts made during the Artemis 2 with their own eyes were amazing to the science team. So we still need this human's eye to do the research for us.
Yes, so I also mentioned about technology. Technology which we can develop in space, we can also use on the Earth. Everybody knows about cameras on our smartphone and etc. But for example, look for the satellites. In current situation, we have a lot of satellites surrounding on the Earth. We have some also on Mars and Moon. There we are looking for source of water for future mission, but also we can use it on the Earth. On the Earth we have water, but the drinking water is very limited amount. So we can use this type of satellite also to looking for water on the Earth. So I think it is very useful, and it shows that the space technology we can also use on the Earth.
So I also wanted to say something, that human space flight is the most difficult and sophisticated part of space engineering. Why? Because there is a human factor that we cannot really control. We can only predict, run some models, digital twins, many things like this, but this is really the most difficult thing that human beings ever made. What it is bringing for us? It is bringing us hope. Because if we develop systems that can, bring humans to space and they can survive, it means that humans can survive everywhere. So this gives us hope to survive in all extreme environments, in all extreme and hard times. Human space flight is one of the best branch of space that is coming back to all of us, to all humanity. All technologies for monitor health, non-invasive health monitoring, all methods how to sustain our brain, our cognitive performances in a great shape. How not to be super old when we are old, so how to keep our brain still functional even if we are worse and worse, yes, older and older. Or if there are some accidents, how to survive, how to train our muscles, recover our bones. Everything is coming from human space flight. So I think that this is the best what we can reach, the human space flight and things that are coming back to the Earth from this branch of space.
Amazing. Any thoughts, very briefly, on how AI can play a role in this? Of course, we were speaking about the human factor, but I think everybody is wondering, from the job market to space, if we can sort of, how much of an extent will that actually matter?
I recommend the movie Aniara. This is a Swedish production, really interesting problem that is trying to be solved in this movie about how AI can support long-term missions. Aniara, please remember and watch it.
Yeah, with the AI systems, there are also plethora of systems, but what I see is how AI could help in the isolation of the astronauts. We can imagine astronauts having avatars of their beloved ones they can talk to with the voice generators, let's call it, like companies like 11 Labs, that they can clone your voice and you can talk to someone you love when you're out there and there are delays or even blackouts. I think that could help solve one of the problems.
I can also add to that the challenge that using AI can bring. We did have a few studies using AI during our missions, especially with the mental support or medical support. And there is still a lot to develop to make sure that the use of AI, if it's a mental support, feels like you are talking to a human. Or if it's a medical support, then maybe some legislations who takes responsibility if the crew applies.
Do we make AI take the Hippocrates oath, right? Like doctors.
Yes, exactly. So it's a great field also to explore, to see where are those issues, because the farther we develop the AI also in the space context, again, it can support us on Earth as well.
Yeah, amazing. I also have a perspective on all of this. I think my answer is pretty simple. My answer is, to some extent, biological, but also very human, because I think we should send humans into space mostly because it's a perfect test bed for a condition that human body was never designed for. It happens to be one of the extreme ones, but it is there for us to use. That includes a lot of research on organoids being sent into space, so basically sort of tissues / organ fragments on chips and looking how they behave that were taken from the astronauts. But the astronauts themselves will also provide a fuller perspective than just that chip. Also, I think in general, every time we do send people into space, or every time we make an effort to every analog mission, every dosimeter reading, every attempt to grow something beyond Earth or in regolith, we learn something that doesn't stay only in space. I think Aleksandra also touched on that. It always has a way of coming back. It comes back in how we understand the body, bone density, immunity, psychology, food systems, architecture for extreme environments back on Earth. There's always an ROI on this. The dual use is really the thing. So if we want to come back to the actual question, the question isn't whether we can afford to send humans to space. The question is whether we can afford the version of science that doesn't include sending them to space. And I think the women on this stage are not waiting for permission to solve these problems, and that's what should we be proud of as women in science, as Polish people, because everyone on this stage is actually from Poland. They're already doing it in orbit, in a habitat, in a lab, in software running on a spacecraft that just came back from the moon. And the question of where humans can really go next already has an answer, frankly. But the question is, who's building the path? People on stage here, maybe people in the audience. So I really want to thank you, all our awesome speakers, awesome ladies, for coming out and sharing your perspective. I don't know, do we have time for a sneaky Q&A here? Do people want to ask any burning questions to the panelists? Okay, you might want to shout, or maybe organizers can get, I think people are getting your microphone in a second. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. I just want to ask like very general question. And my question is, what is the biggest challenge of the human body, like in a space for each of you? If you could point only one thing to tackle in the next few years with like no limits, like money limits.
Yeah, thank you. Very briefly, please.
So for me, it is the mind, like mental health. It is because we can prevent of lose the mass of bones and etc. But human psychology is very different because every person is different, and that's why for me it is the biggest challenge.
I would need to agree because even if as astronauts, we learn everything, we remember all the procedures, or we are prepared in every way, the mental health can affect it all and can change the way we behave, we perform, and also the crew dynamics can be affected this way and other crew members.
Human can prevent several catastrophes, but human can be the catastrophe reason. So I'm the same as girls.
I have to stick to my radiation, right? So yes, I do understand the mental health, but that's why during the astronaut selection we pick really special people. These are people who have crazy hobbies, fly planes, jump with parachutes, and go into caves. So we also make sure that the people we choose are resilient. But the radiation is still quite not really researched upon. And we know we have this mass limitation, and we want to stay longer on Moon or want to go to Mars, and these are contradictions. We want to protect ourselves, but not too much, and want to stay longer. So it's still a big problem. Not even money can solve.
Awesome. I think all of these ladies on the stage deserve a huge round of applause. Thank you for listening to us. You can probably catch them during the summit if you have other questions. And thank you for stopping by for this panel.